Good morning, as Ken would say. Everybody doing all right this morning? Good. Nice looking crowd we got out here. Well, anyway, welcome to Wednesday night service. I'll be attempting to teach a lesson tonight. A little nervous, as always, but I've got a pretty good lesson planned for tonight. I want to start off like we normally would with announcements, and I'm usually the one with announcements, so I'm going to go ahead and make my announcements. We got a work day, April, when? 22nd at 8 o'clock. It's open for everybody in the church. It's for us to get ready for the fall, spring fling. I'll get it right here in a minute. Just to kind of do some outside work and things like that and getting ready for it all. And when is the spring fling? May 6th. I know, I see a couple people remember. All right. I hope everybody's name is on my list, right? Everybody in here has got their name on the list. That's good because we need all the volunteers we can get. We also need cakes baked if you feel like baking a cake, if that's how you want to contribute. I'd appreciate a cake being baked. We also need some volunteers for the dunk tank costume contest. It's going to be fun. It's going to be good. It's going to be a Kodak moment. You just got to get in there and get ready. So I need some sign up for that. What else? Candy, bags of candy stuff, little treats. Now's a good time to find it. It's a lot of Easter stuff's on sale right now. A man named Clarence, usually they put signs up with his name everywhere. Usually a pretty good chance you'll find a good deal. So anyway, those are a few things we need for the spring fling. It's coming up on us quick. I'm really excited. Hope everybody sees the banner out there. This time I hope it's out of the way and not interfering with anybody pulling out. I did set it back some. But we will have some more going up tomorrow in 6 Mile and up there near Durham's. So just keep an eye out for that. We will be mailing out some flyers, hopefully. I got to check on that come Friday. So if you get one in your mailbox, pass it on to someone else because you don't need it. They will. But anyway, has anybody heard anything about our pastor? Yeah, I talked to him the other day, and I asked him if he was listening to the nurses and staying in bed like he's supposed to and not trying to get up. And he said, well, they're having a hard time. I said, well, we need you to get better because, the spring fling's coming up, and I've got him signed up for the dunk tank. And he said, that's one way to cool him off. So he was in a good mood, and it was yesterday I talked to him, and he sounded like he was in a good mood. He's ready to get home, though, so I'm glad to hear that he's made it there. Do we have any other prayer requests? Jesse Sanchez. Austin Malden's family. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Well, we need to pray for America. We need to pray for the things going on. I don't know what's going on anymore. I don't even like to turn on and watch the news, but we should pray. We should pray for the people that's in office up there because they sure do need it. And I believe the Bible, and I believe Jesus said that we should pray for the ones that's over us. So we need to pray for our leaders up there in D.C. and in our states and everything. There's a lot of stuff going on. So with that being said, everybody good? Stan, would you mind opening us up in prayer, please?
glean something from it that we can use in our lives to be a better witness for you. And Father, we do pray for our nation. Lord, we're in this. Don't look like we're doing any better anytime soon. So Father, we pray that as Christians we would all stand for what is right, that we all lift up those that are in blessed leadership to you, and Father, that we would pray that they would seek your guidance and your leadership in making their decisions, Father. Because it's clear they're not doing that right now. Father, we just pray for our nation. Pray, Father, you'd have mercy on us, keep your hand of grace and hand of mercy upon us, and just allow us, Father, enough time to try to get straightened out. And Father, we ask that you forgive us for our sins, our shortcomings, cleanse us, we might be worthy to worship you here tonight. And all these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right.
Real quick, I need to have a quick meeting with the deacons after service.
Quick meeting with the deacons after service tonight. All righty. So a couple weeks ago, when they asked for someone to do Wednesday night service, I volunteered to do it, and I didn't have a clue of what I was going to teach on. And not this past Sunday, not the Easter Sunday, but the Sunday before, I was getting ready for church, and it just kind of came to me. And the title of the lesson is Men and Women of Valor. So does everybody know what the definition of valor is? Or what's your definition of valor? Anybody? Okay. Well, the Google definition for valor is great courage in the face of danger, especially in battle. Stan would recognize this. The medals are awarded for acts of valor. So there's a lot of medals. There's valor in the military. But to me, valor means a lot of other things when I think of that word. And I think of when you say someone has valor. Similar words that go with valor is a backbone. I'm sure we've all heard that saying before, right? They got a backbone, okay? My mom had a backbone. Boy, she'd tell you like it is real quick. Braveness, heroism, manliness. Now that's you can have womanliness too, but manliness is something I think we're lacking a lot today, because our men are turning into women, and that's a problem. And when I think of valor also, I think of someone who has integrity. And if we have integrity and we believe what this word says, then we know those things are not right. It also goes to say, other words, boldness, guts. We all know that, and you got the guts to do it. The opposite, what would you think is the opposite of valor? What would be the opposite of those words? Well, there's one word that stands out the most, and that's cowardness. Because if you're not running or standing up for what you believe in, then you're headed the other way, you're hiding, you're being a coward. So anyway, that's the definition in some words that line up with valor. But as I was reading and studying in the Word, there is and as we all know, there is a lot of people in the Bible that we could attach that valor to, right? And we know some of the most common ones. What would be one of the most common names in the Bible that you think of that had valor? David. That's the first one I thought of. King David. Joshua. Well, when I was thinking, you think of King David, you think of Moses. Moses had to have a lot of guts to stand up to the Pharaoh and all these things. But also, with Moses, there was a couple of other guys there, and I'm trying to get turned to it. So it's in Numbers 13:30, and it says, "And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, 'Let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it.'" Y'all know what that's talking about? They sent some spies over there, right, to go spy the promised land that God has promised them, right? And there was two men that came back and says, "Hey, man, we can do it." And who was those two men? It was Caleb and Joshua. He stood up and he's like, the other people said, "Man, there's giants over there. There's big old people. I mean, we can't take that." But Caleb and Joshua said, "Man, let's go. Let's go right now. We got this." Because why? Because we got God on our side. If you got God on your side, you can do anything. So I think those two men had valor in my eyes because they was willing to fight. Even though the Jewish people didn't want to go. And what happened when they didn't? They wandered around in that circle, didn't they, in the wilderness for how many years? 40 years. That's a long time, right? So we mentioned Moses. All right, so let's jump over here to a woman of valor. And the first one that come to me that I was thinking of as I was studying, do y'all remember the woman Rahab? Does everybody know her? Do y'all think she had valor? What did she do? Hid two Jewish spies and told them she knows their God is the God of the earth and God in heaven above and in earth beneath. So she knew that their God was the God. She had faith also. And a side note in that, isn't she also in the line of Jesus? So that was very important because she could have gotten in a lot of trouble, right? Standing up and hiding those two spies. I believe the story goes that she hid them and then took them upstairs to the roof and hid them behind some, chaff or something they called it? There you go. And so they couldn't be found. And then they said to tie a red ribbon so we know not to kill you and your family as we come and take over the city. So that took, to me, that seems like that's a lot of valor right there because she had to stand up for what she believed in. So let's move on here to another guy. This one's kind of remarkable too, and it's over here. I'm gonna turn to Judges, and I'm sure we all know this story, and y'all could probably think of who I'm getting ready to talk about. But what about Gideon? Did Gideon have valor? What did he do? He came with a whole army, didn't he? And God said, "No, you don't need to take all them men." So it says here that, so he brought down, God told him to take the people down to the water to drink, right? And so he brought them down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, "Every one that lappeth of the water with his tongue as a dog lappeth, he shalt thou set by himself. Likewise, every one that boweth down upon his knees to drink." And all the number of them that lapped, putting their hands to their mouth, were 300 men. That's how many he went and took and won, didn't he? Takes a lot of faith to take 300 men against another army, ain't it? I would say that man had a lot of valor for standing up for what? For what God told him to do, right? So let's move on here to another one. Everybody know Ruth? Who's Ruth? She's got a book named after her, right? Right. She stayed with her mother-in-law, and she worked very diligently, didn't she? For a while, worked in the fields to get the attention of somebody. Boaz, who they had. So I think she had a lot of valor too, because she didn't want to leave her mother-in-law. And she believed in what her mother-in-law believed in, which was God. She knew that he was the one true God. Her faith was there. So she ended up doing what her mother-in-law said, right? And diligently worked in the fields until she got the attention of Boaz. And Boaz and Ruth, who did they have? They had a son, didn't they? Named Obed, which is David's granddad. So there again, she's in the lineage of David and Jesus. So we got Ruth. Let's go ahead and move on to another one. Everybody knows Esther too, don't she? Now there was something about Esther. Does someone know about the book of Esther? That there's one thing that stands out about Esther than any other book in the Bible? See if anybody knows this one. It doesn't mention God. It doesn't. That's right. That's what I was getting ready to say. She saves her people. She approaches the king unsummoned, and she could have died by that act. But she asked him to a feast, which inevitably led to the discovery of, what's his name, Haman. You know, and what happened to him? He ended up, because he was trying to tell everybody no to worship this other god, right? And Ruth was, or to get rid of to punish the Jewish people. So she stands up for her own people, and she did become queen, and she risked her life to do that. So I'd say she had a lot of valor too in doing what she did. Now moving on, we already said David. We know David had a lot of valor. He went through, he did some pretty crazy stuff. Well, one time he snuck into the cave where Saul was at, touched his garment, or he cut it off, didn't he? But he didn't hurt him. So I believe David had a lot of valor. He had a lot of hang-ups too, and a lot of mistakes. So then we move on to the book of Daniel, and we got, this is 3 of them, and we all know this story. This is I rather like this story. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, what happened to them? They put stones around them and threw them in the ocean, right? No? Oh, that wasn't them? They went to a barbecue. Okay. Yeah, they did go to a barbecue. They was the barbecue. That is correct. So how much faith and how much valor and how much integrity do you have or got to have to be able to stand in front of a king that's getting ready to throw you in this fiery furnace and say, no, I'm still worshiping my God, the one true God. Now that takes a lot of guts, if you ask me. And this king was so adamant that he did what? Man, he turned that furnace up, didn't he? He turned the thermostat up to 80 degrees. No, they said 7 times. And then threw him in there. And then that king run over there, and what'd he say? Yeah, he killed the guys that threw him in. You're right. But what happened when that king walked over there and looked through there? He said, wait a minute now, didn't we throw 3 people in there? He says, I see 4. That's right. And was they not bound? And they pulled them out, and what? They didn't even smell like smoke. You telling me, what kind of barbecue is that now? I'd at least took a chicken with me. You know, I'm Baptist. I like chicken. So anyway, I think those men were pretty brave to do what they did. All right, in the same book, the book of Daniel, what about Daniel himself? I think he was pretty brave and had some valor. What did the king do to him? Threw him in a lion's den. I couldn't imagine that. Could you imagine? I think it says he laid down and slept with them, didn't he? Used one of them as a pillow. Can you imagine that? There ain't no way. This guy ain't going in there and sleeping with no lions. But he knew God had him. So let's move back to Judges. And you notice most of these people that I'm talking about is in the Old Testament. We're going to jump over to the New Testament here in a minute. But I'm going to mention this lady right here, Deborah. Does anybody know about Deborah? I didn't know too much about her, really. I know I've read it, but I didn't know a lot about her. There's not a whole lot said about her. But one thing that stood out to me was that she was what? Yeah. But she was the only woman judge in Judges. And I thought that was pretty remarkable. It must have took a woman of valor and integrity to be able to become a judge, right? During the time of the judges. So that's why I listed her, and she did. She won the battle with the other king. That's right. That's right. So let's go ahead and move on over here to the New Testament now. We get to the New Testament. You know, I could have mentioned more like Jonah. You know, Jonah disobeyed God and what happened to him. And I believe what the Bible says. That man was swallowed by a big old fish. And I don't know about y'all, but I couldn't imagine being in a fish's stomach. There ain't no way. But I tell you what, when that fish coughed him up, I know Jesus is the only one that walked on water, but I think I'd been running fast enough I could have walked on water. If it had been me, I'd have been going to where God told me to go, and I'd have been preaching to those people that I was supposed to preach to in the first place. Because I mean, that's just, it's mind-boggling to me to be able to know that you're in the belly of a fish for 3 days. Job. See, I didn't, you know, there's a lot of ones that we know. I looked for some of the ones that's not mentioned as much, but I mean, we could go into the Old and New Testament, and we find plenty of people with valor, men, women, both. Job's a good one too. He never gave up on God. But when we move over here to the New Testament, we find a whole new group of people. I mean, you got Ezekiel, you got other people, Isaiah in the Old Testament that stood up. But anyway, we move over here to the New Testament. And what's the first one that comes to your mind in the New Testament? To me, it comes the one who wore, what was it, elephant skin and ate chocolate and stuff. Was that the one? No, he did what? He wore camel hair and ate locusts, right, and honey. That's the one I think of when I think of the New Testament, John the Baptist. He was out there preaching the way before Jesus. And during that time, that had to take a lot of guts to be able to preach a whole new way, because the Jews, I mean, I don't know if any of y'all have watched that show, The Chosen, but I highly recommend watching it. It's pretty good. It'll bring a new light to the people that's in the Bible, because now it does have some, it takes some liberty with the backstory of people, you know, but it makes them human, just like us. So, John the Baptist. Who else in the New Testament you think would have valor and integrity? Okay, we're going to save that one. We're getting there, but Mary. Which one? Jesus' mom. All right, I did have her down, the mother of Jesus. Now, I'm not a woman. I ain't never had a child, so I don't know how all that goes or how it works on your, I mean, I know how it works and everything, but I mean, I ain't never carried a child, so I don't know. But what? They said Mary was young. And that's got to be pretty scary when an angel of the Lord comes to you and say, hey, you're going to give birth to the Messiah. Now, that had to take some guts for her to say, you know what? I'm here, Lord. You know, and what? She could have been stoned, couldn't she have? For being pregnant out of marriage. But she went ahead and she said yes. And Joseph, he decided to stay with her, right? So I think he had a little bit of valor too, because I mean, he's going to marry a woman who's pregnant, and the angel done told him, "Hey, this is the child of God." I mean, that's a big responsibility. To me, that would scare me. I mean, I couldn't imagine being Jesus' dad or stepdad, bonus dad, however you want to call it. So, who else in the New Testament can we think of that might have some valor? Paul. Boy, that's a good one right there, too. I like Paul's writings. I like what Paul said at one point, too. He said he was the chiefest of sinners, right? You know, that encourages me every day. You know, if we wanted to weigh sins and all this like we do as humans, well, Paul killed somebody. He killed Christians. I didn't do that. So my stuff's not that bad. But no, God don't see it that way, does he? A lie and a murder is about the same to him, ain't it? But Paul said he was the chiefest of sinners, and he wrote most of the New Testament, didn't he? A lot of good stuff there. A lot of good stuff. All right. Who's another person of valor? Peter. Peter was a little ornery, wasn't he, here and there? He's a little ornery. Jesus had to talk to him a good little bit, didn't he? But Jesus saw something in Peter. Saw something that he could use. And Peter was willing to do what the Lord asked him to. But there also came a point in time in Peter to where he denied the Lord, didn't he? There at the end. Denied him 3 times.
Just shortly after resurrection, Peter stood before an extremely large crowd and preached about Jesus.
That's right. So I would say he had a lot of valor. Now, we could go on and on and on to a lot of people, and the lesson is about that. But what I was really getting to in all this that we just talked about, all those people, all these things we just mentioned, it all boils down to us. We got to have valor, don't we? You know, when I grew up as a kid, my dad was an evangelist, and I would sit in church, and I sat in some churches. You look through the floorboard, and you can see the chickens underneath there pecking around. Churches up in the mountains, Pentecostal churches, you know, that they started at 6 o'clock, and sometimes it didn't end until 2 in the morning. But they was talking about days that are here right now. Days and times that we're living in at this moment in our lives. You know, they preached about it way back when. They've been preaching about it since the death of Christ, right? And the resurrection. They've been preaching about his coming. And I know a lot of y'all in here are not much older than me. And I'm still just a baby, and I know y'all not much older than me, but y'all can remember times when times were a lot more gooder than what it is now. You know, we may have technology, we may have these little things right here, but I tell you what, I think sometimes I'd rather go back to the days where you had one of them things on the wall that rung, And you can choose to answer it or not answer it. Simpler times, they're not here much anymore, are they? You know, my wife and I, since I married her, I don't think we've stopped. My life's just gotten busier and busier. And I don't mind it, because a lot of it's working for the Lord and doing what I feel led to do with the Lord. But you wake up one day and it's January. You wake up the next day and it's already July. Because we're so busy these days. We've got so much stuff taken up and occupying our time. I remember as a kid, it took forever for Christmas to get there. I mean, it was as slow as molasses in January. So, I say all that to say, you know, our times have changed dramatically. And I know the preacher has stood up here and preached many a times about he don't think it's too far off. Amen. And I kind of agree with him. You know, you turn on that TV and you look at any news, you look at any channel mostly, and you're going to see stuff going on in this world that you never thought could happen in America. You see a shooting in a Christian school, and the next day or the same day, the president's talking about trans rights and stuff. That just ain't right, folks. And I mean, that's my opinion. It's not just my opinion. It's the Bible's opinion. It's God's opinion. God says it in there now. He don't just say trans, but y'all know what I'm saying. So we mentioned all these people right here of having valor. You know, there's going to come a time, and it's not far off, that some of us in here is going to have some valor. Because they're attacking Christians every day. And you see what happens, and I know preacher has stood up here and talked about, you know, 1972, they took prayer out of school. If I had all the statistics of what has happened in schools and in America since 1972, boy, you'd be astonished of just that one little simple act of taking prayer out of school and what it's caused. So the lesson tonight and what was laid on my heart was we need to have valor. We need to have integrity as Christians. You know, I did a year-long study. It took longer than I wanted to with the men of the brotherhood. A lot of them has heard it. But it was stand up and be the man God made you to be. Where you at, Adam? Somebody remembers that one, don't we? Where you at, Adam? And there's going to come a time to where we're going to have to stand up. But you see what happened, and we could go on and we could say, well, we let them take prayer out of school. Well, they passed the abortion law. Now it's been overturned, but we sat back and allowed that to happen. We've allowed them to sell beer on Sunday. We've allowed all these things. We've just sat back a little bit at a time. And what are they doing nowadays? Nowadays, they don't even know which bathroom to go use. You know, I mean, it's getting confusing out there. People don't even know where they're supposed, what they are. And that's a shame to me. And it's because, you know, as a whole, we have not stood up with what we believe in. Unfortunately, as well as we should. You know, I like to believe, or I do believe, everything that this Bible says very literally. Amen. You know, and if it says these things ain't supposed to be done, they ain't supposed to be done. There's no sugarcoating it. There's no, well, just this little thing. The Bible didn't say that. The Bible said it's wrong. Wrong's wrong and right's right. And two wrongs don't make a right, is what my dad always said. So I'm just saying, I think a lot of today, there's going to come a time to where a lot of us most of us may have to have and stand up for what we believe in. And it may not be. Yeah. What happened to them?
2 years ago, we had a man stand up. He became president 4 years ago. And he's been downgraded and attacked by the media and the far left more than any person on the face of the earth. There's not been allowed. And yet, 1% of the population is controlling this nation.
Yep. See how easy it is, though?
We got people that stood up, a man of valor in my lifetime. But yet, when you get one party that has got as much control and power and money backing,
Mm-hmm.
the media is backing, evilness is going on today. We got one man of valor in my lifetime. But yet, if you speak up, it's single. I'm here picking up, but you can't find a household without a gun in it.
Right?
So if they attack you, not only gonna come to your aid. When the military, our police, the demonized police come to your house, you're gonna be fighting on your own, because nobody's gonna come to help.
Right.
That's the kind of life we're living in today.
Well, you've been a part of it in the brotherhood that I've been talking about. What was some of the things that I've said in there? We as men need to stand up for each other. You know, we had a service here one Sunday, and there was a whole group of men up here signed the resolution saying we're going to stand up for what we believe in. And I think it's very important that not just us men, but women and all stand up for what we believe in. And that's where this lesson come to me at. There's plenty of men in the Bible, there's plenty of women in the Bible who stood up for what they knew was right. And things happened, didn't they? God is the same God He was 6,000 years ago, right? He never changes. He never changes. So things could still happen today. All we have to do, you know what? And sometimes, you know, I've said that men of valor and women of valor, we need to stand up. Sometimes we don't need to stand up. Sometimes we need to do what? Get on our knees. And those who can't get on their knees, we lay down or stand up or however you need to do it. But prayer, God does answer prayer. You know, we saw it here in our own church with our pastor 7 years ago. They come in there and told him he's got 6 months or less. You need to get your stuff in order. That was 7, 8 years ago. That was 7, 8 more years that he got to stand up here and preach to each and every one of us. That's been 7 years that he visited the hospital, visited sick people. He was there when my brother-in-law died. He stayed at the hospital all day with my mother when she passed. Now, I believe we got a pastor in our church that is a man of valor. He's a God-loving, God-preaching man. And he is going to do what God's called him to do until the day he dies. To me, that is a man of valor. And I've told him several times, you know, he reminds me of my dad. My dad, I would also say, was a man of valor. My dad was a prime example for me growing up of what a man of God should be. Now, I didn't listen to him like most kids do. But my dad, one of the things that a preacher that would do my dad really well said at his funeral, said when you met Mr. Ryder 5 minutes later, he's going to be telling you about Jesus. And he didn't care who you was. I know he used to embarrass me as a kid, talking to a waitress, trying to order a meal, and he wanted to know if she's saved. Dad, we just want to order chicken. Come on. But no, he's going to ask her if she knows Jesus. And witness to her right there. You know, I think that's what we're lacking a lot in today's society, in today's world. We're missing people who's just testifying or witnessing to people. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else. I'm preaching to I'm not preaching, I'm talking to my own self. Because I could do a lot more of it. But here in a couple weeks, we've got an opportunity to do a big job of that, don't we? I'm trying to put out as much word as I can about our spring fling to get as many people here as we can. I don't care if 1,000 people came. It wouldn't hurt my feelings one bit. Because that's 1,000 souls that we can try to get in here and sit in these seats and listen to the preaching of God. Because I don't know about y'all, but I know when I get in my vehicle and my wife drives me, my chauffeur back there drives me around, I see people out here cutting grass, doing whatever, drinking, smoking, carrying on, whatever they're doing. And I think to myself, man, does he know Jesus? Or has anybody talked to him about Jesus or her? But do you think I stop and go over there and run over there and ask them? I should. But I'm just as guilty of that myself. But it kind of grieves me inside thinking that that's one person that could die and go to hell. You know, I don't want to see nobody die and go to hell. Especially my own kids, my own family, people I know personally, more or less people that I don't even know out there. The guy that cut us off coming to church or whatever. I don't want to see him die and go to hell either. But it's going to take some of us of valor to stand up. A lot of us. To get things changed. The way things are going in today's world, today's society, I'm telling you, I don't see it. I don't see what else could happen. The last book in this Bible is what? And I'm telling you, it's being unfolded every day. More so than I've ever seen or heard of. You hear about storms, you hear about volcanoes erupting, earthquakes. Hey, it talks about that in Revelations, don't it? We need to be ready, folks. We need to have some valor and stand up. We need to get our family in church. You know, I've got 2 girls that I pray for all the time, and they're not here in church either. And it grieves me to know. And I've talked to my sister. I said, now, I see what my mom and dad had to go through now. You know, when it pains you to see your children do things. And I mean, I tell you what, I don't see how my parents made it as long as they did with me. Because I was a little rough around the edges. But thank God for their prayers. God does answer prayers. Because he gave me the opportunity to surrender my heart to him, and I did it graciously. Now, he knocked me upside the head and put me in timeout, or I put myself in timeout. But he allowed me the time to think. And I thank him every day for giving me the opportunity to change my life. And he's changed it dramatically. And I know a lot of us in here, he's done the same thing too. You know, ain't it nice to be able to go and share that though? Ain't it nice to go and tell somebody, hey, look, Jesus, this is what he did to me or for me. You know, we was talking the other day, I was talking to someone, and it was like, you know, used to drink and all this stuff, and I said, man, I can't even stand to be around it now. Yeah, I was downright ornery. And I thank the Lord for saving me and not me taking my life before I had a chance. Because I'd have been in hell and burning. And it's not just temporary, is it? When you think about hell, man, that's a bad place. And it never ends. It's for eternity. Amen. So I'm just saying, I think a lot of us do have valor, and a lot of us do have integrity. And I know that it's hard to one person or a couple people to make a change in this country, because this country has gone so far. I don't know what's going to take to change it. But I know we as a group, we as Gap Hill Baptists, we have to stand up and believe in what this word says right here. And like I said, May 6th, we've got an opportunity to hopefully witness to our community of 6 Mile and further. Because I've tried to get the word out as much as I can to as many people as I can. I got it on his radio community calendar, so anybody within earshot listening to that or's got the app can look it up and see our event. And I would encourage each and every one of y'all in here tonight, go tell 2 or 3 people that you haven't told about it. Go tell them about Spring Fling. I tell people that I work around stuff. Even if I don't speak their language, I still tell them, hey, Spring Fling, Gap Hill, 6 Mile. They can understand it a little bit. They know more than what you think, some of them. But I try to tell everybody whether they're going to make it or don't make it. I'm telling them. Because I want to see, you know, what was it in, was it Ashbury? Is that the name of it, Stan? Ashbury, Kentucky or whatever, where they had that big revival, 10 days, 12 days. How long did it go on? Wouldn't it be nice to see just a revival break out here in 6 Mile? People get on fire for the Lord. I know preacher said, that's all right, we can set a big old tent out there. We can do it like they did back in the good old days. We can just have a big old tent sitting right out there on the field, and we can fill the thing up. We can have music, shouting, preaching. That's what we need. People need God. We're just, we wasn't made to live without God, because God is what? God is light, right? If we ain't got God, we're in the dark. It's kind of hard to find your way around in the dark, ain't it? You fumble around, you fall, you get yourself hurt. But when it's lit up and you can see what you're doing, boy, it's a lot easier, ain't it? So we need God in our lives. Everyone does. So anyway, we need to be men and women of valor, and I think the days are coming to where that's going to be more prevalent than we've ever seen before, because I mean, we're seeing Christians attacked now, and we got a government that ain't even standing up for them, as we've seen in that Christian school shooting. You know, it's sad. I never thought America would go the way it has. Even back in my sinful days, I never saw it head in this direction, not as fast as it has. And then we go to finish it off. Who had the most valor in the Bible? And it was Jesus Christ himself. He didn't have to come down here. He didn't have to be born and be in the flesh. He didn't have to go and suffer the things that he did and be nailed to a cross. He didn't have to do that. But he did it because he loves each and every one of us. You know, that show that I was telling you about, The Chosen, I've already seen it the first 2 seasons once, and I was rewatching it again with my wife. And as I was rewatching it, I picked up on some things I hadn't noticed before. And it got me thinking. You know, we read the Bible. In the Bible, we get a little tidbit of a conversation, a little tidbit of what's being said. But on this show, it kind of gives a life to Jesus, so to speak. You know, you're able to look at it and you see a man that's tired. You see a man that's hungry. You see a man that's hurting. You see a man that cuts a joke every once in a while. You know, Jesus come down here and he was just like me and you, every one of us. He was just like every one of us out here. He went through the same things we did, or same things we go through every day. He did. I mean, he didn't have to. But he did it because he knew it was the only way for us to get to heaven and spend eternity with him. And he did it graciously. I mean, we can't imagine that. I mean, him in heaven and having everything at his beck and call, or just being in heaven and coming down here to earth, you know, man, that's got to be a shock to the system right there. But like in one of the parts of that program I was talking about, the disciples was sitting around. You know how they was always bickering back and forth to each other. He says, well, we're starving here. Why can't he just speak bread out of and make it come out of thin air? He could have done it if he wanted to, right? But he didn't. Because that's not what he was here for. He was here to spread the word. He was here to create a path for us to get to heaven, to spend with him. So in my mind, out of the whole Bible, Jesus was the one with the most valor. He was the one that each and every one of us should strive to be like. And men, we're supposed to love our wives as Jesus loved the church. And if we love our wives like Jesus loved the church, our wives will love us back. And I could speak for myself. My wife's sitting back there. It's been one of the greatest things to me to be able to have a wife that comes to church, that lives for the Lord, that supports me, because, man, I couldn't do none of this without her. I couldn't even attempt to do any of this without her. But I thank God every day that he sent me a good, God-fearing, loving woman to be in my life. And I tell you what, it's been one of the best marriages so far that I've been married before. And it wasn't nothing like this. So I encourage every one of y'all. We all have valor in us. And we all may need to use it one day, because we all may need to stand up for what we believe in one way, shape, or form. But anyway, that's all I got. I think I went a little bit longer than I was supposed to. But anyway, I hope y'all got something out of it. I know I did, studying it and going over it. But anyway, hope that everybody got something out of it, and we'll get a refill on Sunday. That's all I got.